Sup, guys? Another day, another wrinkled shirt. Yesterday, no play because the one play that I had, the over, I wound up pushing, being a no play because typically what you want to do, because everything is dependent on the starting pitching matchup, or a lot of things are dependent on the starting pitching match. You want to make sure that when you make the bet, those starting pitchers must start for the bet to actually be a play. And otherwise, it becomes a no play. So that's what you got to do. And that is what happened in that Baltimore-Toronto game last night. Baltimore scratched Grayson Rodriguez late, and they wound up going with Albert Suarez. I don't know if I may have still leaned to the over in that case, but at that point, it's just like it was really close to game time. It's like I'm not going to make a play on this with this starting pitching matchup. So just let it go. And good thing I did because it wound up landing 7. So no play yesterday. I will say congratulations to the Chicago White Sox who broke a 21-game loss streak or something like that. Or maybe it was 20. They had tied, I think, the American League record for longest loss streak, or maybe they were 1 game away from tying it. I don't even know what the situation was, but they were able to win against one of the other really bad teams, the Oakland Athletics. Big win for the Chicago White Sox. I know I was going back and forth with Charles in the comments on that. That was a weird situation for the White Sox, actually, because they had listed Jonathan Cannon as their starter, and I was kind of leaning towards the White Sox because I felt, well, they're probably going to be motivated just because everybody's really trashing them at this point. They're going to want to avoid being a historically bad team like this. And Cannon is one of their couple of pitchers who's actually not that bad. And he was up against Ross Stripling for Oakland, who was a pretty bad pitcher. So I was like, I kind of lean to the White Sox in that one. And the Oakland was also a huge favorite. And then the line moved up kind of significantly on Oakland too. And I'm like, oh, what happened? And it seemed like it was because the Chicago White Sox were actually going to start Kai Busch in his major league debut. And he's a guy who had like glimpses of being decent in the minors and Double-A at like one point after he'd been struggling prior to that. But then they brought him up to Triple-A and he was struggling again. It's like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. But they wound up actually still going with Cannon in the game last night. And he had a pretty good outing and they won the game. So congratulations to them. We will move on to today. I don't know if there's anything left to talk about here. There are going to be 2 doubleheaders today, I think, and I'm not getting involved in either of those, which are Arizona, Cleveland, because they had a rain out yesterday, and Anaheim and the New York Yankees also got rained out. So I think both wind up being doubleheaders today. So extra games today, but I'm not going to be involved in either one of those. You get probably the best pitching matchup on the board is Detroit, Seattle. That's Skubal against Kirby, 2 really good pitchers, and they have really good stats against these opposing lineups as well. Neither of these lineups are really that intimidating, and it is in Seattle, which is a pitching park, so it looks like a very under-conducive environment for that one, but the line is sitting at 6.5 juice to the under with a little bit more of the cash than the tickets on the under. It's not something I really want to get involved in, but if you like pitching battles, that could be where you might want to look in that one. I will also mention, I leaned to the San Diego Padres, and it looks like I said, like I talked about yesterday, it seemed like it was a situation where you had public and professional agreement on the San Diego side. They're a public road favorite yet again, fairly heavy favoriting, and they're up from -140 to -152 in this one, similar to last night, and of course they wound up winning. They have 87% of the tickets, it looks like tonight, but 95% of the cash. So I don't know if those percentages are really totally accurate, but what we can take away from it is that the Padres are public again against an inferior Pirates team. Padres really are the better all-around team, just like last night. They have the better starter, they do have the better bullpen, and they have the better offense. So the professionals seem to be coming in agreement with the public and driving this lineup even further. But I don't want to really lay a huge price. Just like I said last night with San Diego, I didn't really want to do that, even though I thought they were the side, and they were. But I believe that last night's game also had a rain delay in the second inning because neither starter went more than 2 innings in the game. They were both pitching fine. So Cease and Falter were both out of the game. So it must have been a rain delay. San Diego still wound up winning the game, but both teams really had to use their bullpen fairly extensively. So I don't really want that much to do with the bullpens in this game. So even if I would lean to San Diego, this is Michael King against Marco Gonzalez. I think it is a mismatch. Michael King is a really good pitcher. Second to Dylan Cease, I would say, in San Diego's rotation. Very good, very high strikeout rate. And I think he has good numbers against Pittsburgh, too. Marco Gonzalez has like a pretty high whip, I think, which is indicative that his ERA should probably be higher than it actually is. So he's been struggling as far as putting base runners on. And I think his stats against San Diego are not as good. He's not as good as Michael King is. San Diego, the one issue I would have with it is that, well, they use their bullpen even more extensively than Pittsburgh did last night, even though I think San Diego's bullpen is better and their hitting is better. I think they have still every edge in this game, really, except for maybe the bullpen rest, which might kind of negate the fact that I think they have the better bullpen. So if I was going to play this, though, just because it's a big-time starting pitching mismatch, I might look to try to go first 5 inning on this, but I don't know if the price might be even more drastic, and they might even be a more dramatic favorite. So, I mean, if you want to do it, you could still maybe even come in San Diego run line on the full game or something like that, which might have been the way to play it last night, too. That's that. And I will mention quickly San Francisco and Washington. San Francisco looks like they're in the same boat as San Diego's. They're a road favorite around the same price, minus 145 up to minus 158, 89% of the tickets and 97% of the cash. So they're also public and seem to have more of the cash pouring in on them as well. So maybe public and professional agreement on San Francisco as well. But I'm not necessarily sure I agree with the San Francisco side, not as much as I would agree with the Padres necessarily. I think the Padres, it's a real mismatch there. San Francisco, I think maybe we're overvaluing Blake Snell a little bit too much now. And he's had 2 really good starts in a row with really high strikeout numbers. So he seems to have returned to his old form, but he is coming off a no-hitter, which, of course, when you come off a no-hitter, you're kind of in line for a letdown after that. And I know I said that about Cease, and that game still did not go my way with the Dodgers, but Cease did have kind of a regression in that game. He pitched well enough to win the game, but he only went like 5 2/3 or something and put more men on base than we're used to seeing out of him. So even for him, I mean, he's just a really good pitcher, but it was still a regression by his standards. And I think we might see the same for Snell. He could be in a letdown just coming off that no-hit performance, and he's facing a bad team in Washington, which is why the public is all over San Francisco. But I don't know why the professional bettors seem to be as heavily on San Francisco as they are, because Snell, I think, could be in line for a letdown and may pay a little bit less attention to a team like Washington. Washington has Jake Irvin starting, and he hasn't been that bad. He's probably been their best starter, really. His whip is good, and his stats are pretty good as far as what I look for, and he doesn't have bad stats against San Francisco either, I don't believe. And I think Snell has pretty good numbers against Washington, too, so could be a pitching battle there. Could potentially even lead to an under there, but Snell, again, like I said, he could be in a letdown spot, so it's a little bit difficult to want to do anything with that. The 2 games I'm actually going to be on, I am in agreement with the market, and the market seems to be indicating against the public team in both of these with reverse line movement. So I like both of these, and we have kind of a similar situation with the starting pitching matchup in both of these too. So I like that aspect as well. So I'm going with both of these. They're both going to be money line underdogs. First one up is a 6:40 p.m. Eastern game, and I'm going to be on the Miami Marlins against Cincinnati. What am I doing? Am I insane? In this battle of, I guess this is a battle of lefty starting pitchers, I believe. Cincinnati is certainly going to be public, man. I mean, Miami, everybody knows they're a bad team. Cincinnati's won both games. This is a 4-game series, so we're only 2 games into the series, so it's not a sweep avoiding situation quite yet, but I still think Cincinnati could get a little bit complacent after beating a bad Miami team twice in a row. They could maybe take their foot off the gas a little bit here, just mentally not be totally focused potentially after beating these bad Marlins twice. Cincinnati is very public. They've got 87% of the tickets, but only 57% of the cash. And the line has moved down from minus 147 to minus 137. So they're a public road favorite with a lot less of the cash than the tickets on them. And the line has reverse moved against the public ticket percentage. So that's the type of stuff I like to look for, man. Fading public road favorites that have reverse line movement against them and a significant cash discrepancy there. So that appears to be what's happening there. It seems like some of the more significant bets have driven this line down towards the Miami side. So I'm going to agree with it. And I'm going to agree with it due to the situation and actually the starting pitching matchup here. And I don't think that the bullpen situation is that bad for Miami. I don't think either of these bullpens are really that good, but both teams had similar bullpen usage in yesterday's game, which, like I said, was another easy win for Cincinnati. I thought Max Meyer would do better in that game for Miami, but even though he was out of the game after 4 innings, Miami only used 2 relief pitchers. They used one guy for 4 innings to finish the game, so their bullpen really was not taxed yesterday very much. They have most of their bullpen still available. The Reds actually used a little bit more of theirs. They used 3 of their relievers and a couple of their better relievers in relief of Lodolo. Had another pretty decent start, pretty good start for him, even though he had worse numbers against Miami, actually. So Cincinnati, actually, their bullpen is less rested coming into this game than Miami's is after using theirs a little bit more yesterday. So I don't think Cincinnati really has the bullpen advantage here. I think the situational edge goes to Miami because they're trying to avoid the sweep, even though they're going to play tomorrow too. When you've lost 2 games to this team, that team that won the first 2 and know they're the better team, like I said, they could get a little bit complacent, whereas Miami could be a little bit more focused here, just trying to get a win in any way they can here. And the starting pitching matchup, I do think, is in favor of Miami here. And it might not look like it on the surface. Andrew Abbott is pitching for Cincinnati. He's got a pretty good-looking 3.41 ERA, but 1.29 whip. I like Abbott, but that 1.29 whip kind of tells you there's something a little bit going on there, or maybe he's getting a little bit lucky. He's putting too many men on base. I think that is the case. He's got 97 strikeouts and 46 walks on the season, so that's a high walk number, and 21 home runs allowed. So his issue with the long ball has been pretty prevalent this year, too. He's given up too many home runs, and some of it is because Cincinnati plays in a home run conducive park, which is less so the case in Miami, but still, those stats aren't very good. He's allowed 110 hits and 121 in the 3rd innings, so the amount of hits is good. He hasn't been that hittable, other than the fact that when he's given up contact, it's been hard because he's given up a lot of home runs, but his strikeout rate is low. He's not really fooling that many guys, and his walk rate is pretty high, so I don't like that. In the month of July, he had a 17-13 strikeout walk ratio. That's not good either. In 27 to 3rd innings, 27 hits allowed. And he faced mostly pretty poor offenses, too, except for the Yankees, which he actually did okay against the Yankees as far as not allowing that many hits, but he walked too many guys. Then he faced Colorado, Miami, Washington, Tampa. That's not exactly a slew of great offenses, and he kind of struggled in a lot of those games. And he struggled in that Miami game, only going 3 1/3, giving up 7 hits, 5 earned runs, 2 homers. This was in Cincinnati, by the way. 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. He did not have a good performance in that game against Miami, so that's not good. And Miami facing him again, so there's recent familiarity, which is one thing I like to look for as well. I think that's a disadvantage to the pitcher when this lineup just saw him, and now they're seeing him again not too long after that, less than a month later. In this case, he saw them on July 13th. These hitters saw him. I think they're going to be more comfortable facing him. They've seen him recently. They know what to expect, and they hit him well in that game, too. They did well against him. So I think it's a disadvantage for Abbott. I think his ERA might be causing him to be overvalued a little bit, and he didn't do well in his most recent start either. His one start in August, he didn't even make it 5 innings, gave up 7 hits. He did have an 8-1 strikeout walk ratio in that game against the Giants, but he gave up 2 earned runs. They lost the game. He had no offense behind him, but still, it was again not a good performance. He gave up too many hits in that one, which usually it's the walks that are his problem, and that one he gave up too many hits. He's just not really in good form right now, man. And up against Miami, mostly I think it's just that game from last month where he faced Miami. And that was basically Miami's first time facing him, and he still did badly. So I think that's a sign that it's not a good situation for him here, man. If Miami can come in cold and still do well against Abbott, and now after facing him once, they're facing him again and they're familiar with him now, I think that's a disadvantage for Abbott. As much as he might remember that performance and want to bounce back from it, I think that it tends to kind of go the other way. And these hitters, the familiarity matters, man. And Miami is 4 for 10 off him lifetime with one extra base hit, a home run from Jake Berger. 2 RBIs, 2 strikeouts, 2 walks. So very small sample size. It's pretty much all that one other start, but a 400 batting average and 1,200 OPS. So Abbott does not have good stats in that small sample size, at least against Miami. Then on the other side, Valente Belotso is pitching for Miami. I've mentioned him a couple of times. He's a rookie, and He's only gone exactly 5 innings in each of his 3 starts so far, but at least you're getting some kind of consistency out of him, and he hasn't been that bad. His ERA is 4.2, which looks mediocre, but his whip is 0.93, so he has not been putting a lot of guys on base, and in 15 innings, he has a 15-3 strikeout walk ratio, so that's pretty impressive for a rookie who came in and had to face Kansas City, Boston, and Atlanta. That's not really an easy task. None of those teams are really that bad offensively. Boston and Atlanta both actually pretty good offensively, and he did pretty well in those starts, man. Even though he allowed 5 runs against Boston, still had an 8-1 strikeout walk ratio. The 15 strikeouts in 15 innings is pretty good, 1 per inning. That's not bad, especially for a rookie, man, coming into this. 3 walks allowed isn't bad. It's a good strikeout walk ratio. He's got good command. Allowing 2 home runs is not great, but could be a little bit fluky. You never really know. One was from Boston, one was from Atlanta. I mean, those are both teams that can hit well. And he only allowed 11 hits in those 15 innings. So that's 7 earned runs that he allowed is actually higher than what you would expect based on the few base runners that he's allowed. So he's actually been pitching pretty well. Excuse me. So I like that. Even though he hasn't gone that deep into these games, they did let him go 98 pitches in the game against Boston. And coming off the Atlanta game where he did pitch pretty well again, 5-2 strikeout walk ratio, 2 earned runs allowed, only 2 hits allowed in 5 innings. They kept him on a short leash in that one and only let him go 66 pitches. Maybe because he was coming off 98 in the previous game against Boston. But we may see him be allowed to go a little bit more extended in this game. They might extend him out a little bit, let him throw more pitches. Maybe they'll keep him at 5 innings again. I don't know. Maybe that's what they've been doing, but we got Bellotto, who's been pitching pretty well. And, of course, you know what I'm going to say. Cincinnati's never seen him before. And he seems like he hasn't really been intimidated by facing these good lineups. He's been getting good strikeout numbers, hasn't been walking a lot of guys. So I like that. I think Bellotto's not that bad, man. And up against Cincinnati, I think he's got the edge because Cincinnati has never seen him before. So they have to adjust to him, figure him out. Like I always say, these young pitchers with decent stuff have maybe a little bit of an early advantage because the hitters are not familiar with him, haven't seen him before. So you have that going up against Abbott, who was just seen by these Miami hitters and didn't even do well in that game. So I think the advantage does go to Miami in a lot of the aspects of this game here. You can get them as a home underdog right now at plus 130. You can just fire on that on the money line. I think that is the way that I would do it because if you want to make it a spread bet at run line, you're paying minus 134 to get the plus 1.5 runs. So it's probably not what I would do. I would just fire on the money line. Plus 130, that's play 1. And the other play, very similar. We're going to be on another game where there's reverse line movement against the public, which is going to be to fade the LA Dodgers in a late game here. Of course, it's West Coast, 10 p.m. Eastern. Philadelphia, LA, one of the big games, on the slate. Dodgers are, of course, public because they've been playing better than Philly has been recently. Philly, one of the other better teams in baseball, really, but they've really kind of trailed off recently or tailed off. I don't know what the phrase even is, but they went through a stretch where they weren't playing as well, although they were facing some pretty good teams mixed in there, like the Yankees and stuff. But Philly went on a bit of a slide. People like the Dodgers a little bit more than they like the Phillies right now, and I think they like the known quantity in the starting pitching matchup here over the guy that they don't know between the Dodgers and Philly here. So the public is slightly on the Dodgers, not by that much, but 54% of the tickets, but 57% of the cash on the other side on Philadelphia. The line's gone down from minus 145 to minus 134 on the Dodgers at home. So we see, again, reverse line movement going against where the public percentage of tickets is, at least to some degree. And we see the cash actually seemingly coming in on the other side on Philadelphia. Some more of the bigger bets is what that is indicating. And I agree with the Philadelphia side in this one, even though they did actually win yesterday, I believe. So the series is split 1-1 right now. Dodgers won the first game 5-3. Maybe a little bit of a difficult spot for Philly having to go out to the West Coast to start that series. And then Philadelphia played better yesterday, won 6-2. They're able to get a win despite having to face Clayton Kershaw. Kershaw is still kind of on a short leash, actually. He didn't pitch badly, but they limited him to 81 pitches. I don't know if he got hurt or something because they didn't even let him finish the 5th inning. I don't know what that was about. But he got taken out, and then the Dodgers bullpen actually fell and blew the game pretty much in what was a low-scoring game for a while. The bullpen for the Dodgers kind of blew it right after Kershaw was out of the game. Phillies used 3 relievers. Dodgers used 3 relievers. So I think the relief pitching is kind of, I think, even as far as the rest advantages. I don't think it goes one way or the other, really. The Phillies' three relievers, they did use some of their better relievers yesterday, some hold men, because it was kind of a closer game for a little while. So I guess slight advantage maybe to the Dodgers. Both of these teams have okay bullpens. So I don't think it's going to be that much. I think it's kind of a wash, really, even though the Phillies maybe slight disadvantage there in the bullpen usage because they used better relievers yesterday than what the Dodgers did, with both teams using three relievers. But I think it's still, like I said, a little bit of a wash. Then we look at the starting pitching matchup here, man, which I think is a big aspect of what's going into this game here. Tyler Phillips is pitching for Philadelphia, and I know he really did badly. I had the under in his game at Seattle. Thought it was a good spot to take the under, and he did really badly. But that was by far his worst start of the season, man. That jacked his ERA up to 4.39. It was like in the twos prior to that game. Still has a 1.01 whip, even with that game where he walked three guys. They have up 5 hits, 8 runs. All of those runs scored in earned fashion. Gave up 3 home runs in a park that doesn't allow that many home runs, Seattle, and only had 1 strikeout. So he's coming off his worst performance of his career, man. But he was also coming off a complete game shutout over Cleveland. So maybe he did just have like a letdown spot and have a bad game in that game against Seattle, which I didn't expect, but it does happen. He was coming off 2 shutout performances before that, where he went 15 innings, only allowing 8 hits, striking out 7 and only walking 2. So he had come off 2 really good starts. He went 6, 6, and 9 innings in his 3 middle starts. He only didn't go 6 in that most recent start, which was awful against Seattle, and his first start, which was against the Braves, and he didn't even have a bad start in that one with a 7-0 strikeout walk ratio, 3 hits allowed, only 1 earned run allowed on a solo homer. But they limited him to 4 innings in that one. But then they kind of unleashed him after that, man, to the point where they let him go a complete game, like I said, against Cleveland and throw over 100 pitches. But maybe, again, like he got so extended in that game that maybe he just had nothing left for that game against Seattle. But now I think he's in a bounce back spot again after pitching so badly against Seattle. We've seen good stuff out of him otherwise, man. He's got a 20-5 strikeout walk ratio, only 22 hits allowed, and 26 and 2/3 innings pitched. So the strikeout rate isn't really high, but strikeout walk ratio is good. He hasn't walked many guys. He's allowed 6 home runs, which is bad, but 3 of them were in that one game against Seattle. So I don't put that much stock into that either. I'm not sure that is really that much of an indicator to look at. So I'm not too concerned about that. And like I said, he hasn't allowed many hits, fewer than 1 per inning. So he's been good, man, for the most part in his rookie season, even though he's a 26-year-old. It's a little bit late for a rookie, but I think he was dealing with injuries or something like that when he was in the minors. So his start to the majors, his progress up to the majors was kind of a little bit delayed because of it. I think he is one of their prospects that they can have like fairly high, they consider to be fairly high up in their organization as far as their prospects. And of course, we have a situation where because he's a rookie, the Dodgers have never seen him. So just like the other game, man, we have reverse line movement, and we have a starter who is unfamiliar to these opposing hitters, which could be an advantage to that starter early on, which in this case is Phillips. So I think that's a little bit of an edge. And then we look the other way. Whereas I think the public, because they really don't like what they're going to see here, they say, oh, Gavin Stone for the Dodgers, he has the better ERA. We know him better. He's been around for a little bit now. So the public seems like they're going to only really want to come in. They're only really going to want to come in on the Dodgers here because they know who Stone is. His ERA is better on the season. They don't know who Phillips is. They see that his most recent start was absolutely putrid. So recency bias a little bit there too. But I think the advantage actually goes to Phillips in this starting pitching matchup, man. Stone, yeah, his 3.63 ERA is good. But just like I was saying with Abbott, the whip is indicative of an ERA that should be worse than that, man. 1.3 whip. He's putting too many men on base. And he has been struggling at a lot of points this season. He's got an 87-31 strikeout walk ratio. Just like I said with Abbott, not a high strikeout rate and not a good walk rate. Like, it's just not a great strikeout walk ratio. 114 hits allowed and 111 and 2/3 innings pitched. That's also not that great. And 13 home runs allowed, not really that great either. But 114 hits and 111 and 2/3 innings, that's not great, man. That means more than 1 hit per inning. So he's really putting too many men on base by a lot of these different metrics. His most recent start was pretty bad against Oakland. He went 4 innings and had to get yanked because he allowed 8 hits and only 1 walk, though. But he was hittable, 5 earned runs allowed in that one, 2 home runs, 5-1 strikeout walk ratio was good. But the rest of his stats, that was a pretty abysmal performance against a bad Oakland team. Granted, it was a second straight road start for him. In his previous start, he did a bit better against Houston, but he still put 11 earned base runners on in the game against Houston in 6 innings and allowed 2 home runs and somehow got out of there, only allowing 4 earned runs. So I don't know how he keeps escaping like this, man. In his 4 starts in June, he had a 6.27 ERA. It was against all good lineups, though. Arizona, Philly, oh boy, Boston, and Houston. And he didn't do great. But again, like I said, those are good offenses. But still, he went 3 innings, 4 2/3, 5, and then 6 in those. And then he went 4 in the game in August against Oakland. So did I say June? I meant July. If I said June, July, he had bad numbers in July, man. 12-5 strikeout walk ratio and 31 hits allowed in 18 2/3 innings, 5 home runs allowed too. Even if you're up against some really good offenses, those are still bad numbers, man. And then followed it up with a bad start against a weak Oakland offense. So he has not been in great form, hasn't been pitching well. And you know what I just alluded to? He just faced Philadelphia, even though it was at Philly. Just like I said with Andrew Abbott, we have recent familiarity here on one side where Stone just pitched in Philly and didn't do well in that game. Went 4 2/3 and had to get pulled and allowed 4 earned runs. He did have 3 strikeouts and no walks, which is fine, but he allowed 9 hits. Not a good performance, man, from Stone. So we have recency here. Philly has seen him before, and they've seen him recently, and that's not the only time they've seen him. So with both Abbott and Stone, I'm going against both of them. They both were just seen a month ago, less than a month ago, by these opposing hitters. So the opposing hitters are used to seeing them. And with Stone, we have more of a sample size than just that, and it is not good for him. Against Philadelphia, lifetime, they're 16 for 39 off him with 5 doubles, a home run, 7 RBIs, 4-2 strikeout walk ratios, and not a lot of strikeouts. That's a 410 batting average and a pretty decent sample size, and 1,054 OPS. So Stone has really struggled against Philadelphia. So in both of these games, man, we have a starting pitcher who has the worst whip, and they were just seen by these opposing hitters up against a rookie pitcher who has never been seen by the opposing hitters. So I'm going with that rookie pitcher. I'm going with the unfamiliarity. I think we get the edge in the starting pitching matchup in both cases. We're playing the money line in both of these. It is Miami Marlins plus 130, Philadelphia Phillies plus 120. Money line action, and the market is indicating an agreement on both of those, at least right now, with reverse line movement and some pros versus Joes type of stuff going on. Have a good one, man. Peace.